today it's how to tap into that joy even if things are not going well. And this got inspired for what? As much as many things in life do, they get inspired from our personal lives and where we've been going in our lives and experiencing the ups and downs of living. And while I'm talking to you, I'm going to put a little timer on as well. And what's been happening from what I found, really interestingly, for me, that in 2014 to 2016, I was in my second abusive marriage, and I was living in Pakistan. And I had a whole lovely big story in my head about myself not being worth terribly much at all. I also had some challenge to myself that I needed to out poverty the locals even. I was talking to a girlfriend about that this morning, going, it was mad. And so I thankfully have snapped out of that one. And in fact, over the last year have worked beautifully on, well, actually not had to work. It's not about work. And this is what you'll find out. It's not working as in really hard effort. It's just simply about awareness of the stories, knowing that they're illusions and letting them go. And this is the core difference between the framework that I work with, called the inside out paradigm, and sort of say NLP and other narrative therapies out there, is that we don't have to actually analyze a damn thing. And that in itself is joyful baking. So the inspiration for this then came because I'd left that marriage. I came back to Australia. I had nothing. I had a suitcase of clothing that was useless for my climate and my country. And I had nothing to come back to except my mum and my daughter, thank God. But yeah, I was not in a good state. And in the process of, healing from that, setting that aside, moving on and thriving from crappy marriage number 2, mistake number 2, and in my mid-40s, I'm now 49 in April, a lot of different ways of being all came in a unified way of understanding how to show up, how to be in whatever's going on. I had initially thought that in order to be happy, I needed to do a whole lot of stuff. And I had to change things. And I didn't have to do any of that in the end. And so this is what this inspiration for my Awaken model of joyful living, 6 elements of joy. It's a model of living based and inspired upon the teachings of the inside out paradigm that I work from. And I'm going to unpack that for you a little bit today with a whole lot of stories in there in between. So that's what we're going to do. I've already started telling you a bit of who I am, but I'll get to that as well a little bit more. We're going to look at the truth of your feelings, where they actually come from, because majority of us are walking around with a complete delusion as to what our feelings are telling us and where they're actually coming from. We're going to have a look at the number 1 reason behind fear and anxiety and overwhelm. We are going to look at the 6 key elements of joy of my unique Awaken program, model, and therefore program that comes from it. Then, as I'm doing this now, I'm talking to you and shuffling at the same time. Probably not a good idea. I can't really do 2 things at once, but that's what I'm doing. And hopefully at the end, what I'll do is I will pull an affirmation card just for the group, and let's ignore the noise outside. I'm going to dazzle you with a few testimonials. And then I want to end with showing you how, if this all resonates with you and you just go, I've got to have this joy reboot, give it to me now, here's my wallet. I'm going to show you how you can do that. And that will be working with me in my 7-week program that I am going to be launching at the end of this month. So there you go. So who am I? I'm going to move myself around over there. So who am I? My name is Pia Antico. I am the founder of Essential Awakening Mentoring. I am newly named, because I did have a different title, I am newly named a Joy Reboot mentor. I am an author. I am looking forward to my first book coming out, co-authored book coming out, and I'm looking forward to it hitting Amazon's bestseller as the publisher promised it would. So soon that will be best-selling author. Yay! I'm also working on my own solo book, which I really do hope will come out by next year, about this time next year. That will be around the joy. I'm tentatively thinking the year of living joyfully. We'll play it by ear on that one. And I support successful women over 40 who, in fact, are feeling unfulfilled. They may well have achieved many of the metrics, the status symbols of what the society says is successful. They may well have the family, then the hubby or the wife or the kids and the job and the money, and they've gone places and they've done stuff. But now looking at the second half of their adult life going, is there more than this? And I'm telling you there is. There may also, this is also, however, also available for my beautiful women 40 and over who, like myself, may not have actually had all the markers and metrics of Western society's success. Lord knows I haven't. And they too are coming into the second half of life going, God damn it, I want better than this. And so it's for all my beautiful women over 40 who are just determined to reboot their life, live it for themselves, be guided by their innate inner wisdom, and yeah, not keep just blindly following the rules and doing what everyone else expects of them. And the beautiful approach that I have is that, yes, we can do all that with a kind of, middle finger to the world, screw you kind of attitude. But when we approach life from that, screw you attitude, it actually keeps us connected to the stuff that we're like trying to run from and remove from our lives. It still keeps us energetically connected. It's not spacious. It's not beautiful. It's not joyful. It is absolutely possible to joyfully, with goodwill, remove yourself and remove from your life the difficult people, the unpleasant situations that don't serve you. The best way to let them go is actually joyfully and with compassion and patience and goodwill. And my program will show you how to do that. It took me a while to figure that one out. I was railing against the injustices of society and the ex-husbands and my dad and, frankly, myself for quite some time. And no, wasn't happy. There was no joy. There was no joy. So I worked out how to do the whole joy thing. Yeah. And that's what I want to work with you, with all my beautiful women in that way. So, and that's with my Awaken model of joyful living. I've got 3 degrees in psychology. I've got a master's in community development. I have certification in counseling. I am certified as an inside out 3 principles practitioner. And all that head knowledge is, of course, absolutely unimportant if there isn't a lived experience to back all that up. And so, yeah, I've been through the 2 abusive marriages and got myself out of them. I've experienced the ups and downs of poverty and homelessness, and I was run over at the age of 28. I was run over at 100 kilometers an hour and sustained a life-threatening, life-altering brain injury, which took 20 years to get over and kind of crimped my style, cramped my style, whatever that saying is, but you know what that saying is. It kind of put a little dampener on my ability to move on in life in ways that my peers would be. But in the midst of all that, I had my beautiful daughter, who I absolutely love to bits. She is the most amazing young woman. But things were not easy between us either. We were both spiraling out from our own traumas and not able to show up for each other. Well, frankly, me as mum, I was not able to show up for her for a period of time in the way that she needed, because I was spinning out in my own way. And it was with my inside out training and my practice in it that really helped me to forgive myself, first and foremost, for not being able to show up in the best possible way, and be open for her so that she indeed could forgive me for not being able to show up in the best way possible, and also then forgive herself. And so now she's 24 going 25. She's married to a really lovely young man who I just absolutely adore, and I'm completely relieved that she did not make my mistakes in marriage, at least, and we're best of friends. And so this is all also coming from the insight, the embodied realization of the core fundamental principles of the inside out paradigm, and letting that over time permeate through all the little nooks and crannies of life. And so this is me. This is what I get to sort of walk in with and hopefully share, as I certainly do talk about my life, and maybe from that someone can benefit from the mistakes I've made and the things I've learned. This is what I'm hoping. Okay, so let's get started. If the only thing people learned was not to be afraid of their experience, that alone would change the world. This is by a Scottish welder called Sydney Banks. And Sydney Banks had an enlightenment experience. He had an epiphany. He and his wife were at a retreat for couples, because they were actually having couples issues back in the late 60s. And they were at this weekend, and he was like, this just doesn't make sense. This is all, he just thought it was all rubbish and nothing was hitting home to him at all. And he was talking to another person that was attending, and they were talking back and forward. And in the process of the conversation, the man that he was talking to said, there's nothing wrong with you, because Sydney was just thinking there was something wrong with himself. He said, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just your thinking. And that seemingly very simple statement actually set him off into an enlightenment epiphany experience that enabled him to see the mechanics of experience in the same way that we see the Newton, thinking of his scientists that saw the mechanics of gravity. It's the same law, it's the same principle that is just a fact of how things work. And over time, he gave many, many talks to the 70s. He died actually in the mid-90s, I do believe, I think, yes. And he gave numerous talks around the world. And there is now a 3 principles global community, and a number of wonderful coaches and mentors that work from this. And it's an ever expanding, thankfully, yay, ever expanding modality to help people get in touch with their innate, true wisdom self, based on a number of core principles of the truth of human experience. And so this quote is pointing to the fact that a lot of all of what people are scared of in their human experience as they're going about in life, they tend to be scared of their thinking and their feelings that arise, and spend a lot of time and energy trying to you know, avoid them, run away from them, control them, and all the rest of it. And you'll find that by the end of my talk, hopefully, and that when you work with me, that it's totally unnecessary. Because all that's happening when you're doing that is you're just mucking around with the illusion, and it's not the truth. So there you go. So life after 40. Life after 40. Why 40? Why am I into this? Well, I'm into life after 40 because I am 49 this year. And so obviously it's very helpful to talk around the things that you know. And I know what it is to be in my 40s. It's also because it's actually the next level of transition and upheaval, particularly for women, because of the way we, all the things that we have to take care of in life. It's a transition that is as tumultuous as being a teenager and coming into your adolescence. So much is happening for us. We find that we are having changes in our family structure. The kids, for those of us who had kids early, I do understand that there are now women in their late 30s, early 40s who are having children young, like having young children at the later stage. So in fact, they're running around with little kids and a different set of stresses than the ones whose kids are getting ready to leave home. I haven't had personal experience of that. I did get pregnant twice in my second marriage and had miscarriages, however. Well, that's something that a lot of us actually have experienced, unfortunately. So we have changes in our family structures. A lot of us are either experiencing being widows, with partners dying, and or divorce. We are experiencing a change in our identity as we age. And I can tell you right now, I don't know, I find society's messages to women over 40 awfully confusing. I don't know what's worse, the previous generations back where women over 40 were just, you know, disappeared into the ether, or this sort of message that's coming to us now that 40 is still, you know, relevant and legitimate if you've got J-Lo's body. It's like, please, not all of us do. And or looking at the grey power influencers that you're seeing on Instagram, they're all really fabulously dressed in kind of arty, creative, boho dramatic clothing, and they're all stick thin. So yes, they've got grey hair, absolutely beautifully styled, but again, a bit sort of unrealistic. So then it's almost, I don't know for me, but I feel like it's almost it's just extended the timeline of the pressure on women to look sexy and have good bodies. I mean, it was bad enough that we had to face that in our teenage years and 20s. It's like, come on, people. So we have identity issues coming up as we age and all that. And then we, you know, we've got aging parents. We've got the loss of parents. Studies have shown that there is indeed an increase in self-reflection, thankfully, at this time. So this is where it's really joyful to know that it's not too late. We may well have lived the first 20 years of adulthood serving others and following other people's expectations, but it's not too late to change that. And of course, there were professional changes as well. We may be experiencing a greater push to be sidelined. For some, for others, they are doing very well indeed, but there is that pressure there. But as I said, it's never too late, you know. The only thing getting in the road of you choosing to live wholeheartedly is your fear-based ego thinking. And by the end of this, you will understand that your fear-based ego thinking has absolutely no reflection on what society, you know, what's out there in the world, nor has it got any reflection on you and your worth either. It's illusion. So, the truth, the number one truth, where do your feelings come from? Now, for most of us, the majority of us, we have this theory, this story that we were told that so-and-so made us feel something. Even when our kids come home, we hear ourselves, we catch ourselves saying, if little Tommy comes home and he's crying or upset, and we'll say, "What's wrong, Tommy?" Jane or whatever, "What's wrong? Did someone do something to you? Did something happen? Was so-and-so a bully?" That kind of thing. We speak that language. We look at outside and say that the outside world, another person, another event, we'll say our kids are driving us crazy. We'll say our job is pissing us off. We'll say our spouse is frustrating us. We can equally say our job is exciting. We can say we're having fun on our holiday. Our holiday is giving us a great deal of enjoyment. We can say that we are feeling, satisfied with that chocolate that we're eating. All manner of things. But we say things in terms of that thing out there is making us feel what we're feeling, and then by dint of saying that, we then have this reflex of action that when we feel something, good or bad, if it's good, we seek to chase after that thing outside of ourselves to hold on to it or repeat it, do it again, hence the lovely chocolate. And we go, "Gee, that was yummy." And just as we're putting that one in my mouth, we're reaching for the other one. And oh, look, that box of chocolates has gone in the space of, I don't know, a couple of Netflix movies. Hands up. So when we think that the outside world is the thing that is causing us to feel happy, sad, angry, frustrated, we then look towards the solutions outside. But it's an illusion. Our feelings are not a reflection of the outside world. And our feelings are also not a reflection of our inner being. When we might be in a low mood or a good mood or a bad mood, it's also absolutely got nothing to do with us internally or the world outside. Now, feelings, so then where they're coming from? Feelings come from our thinking. So we have a thought that comes floating in the ether, and a thought pops in our head, and the thought just pops in the head, and emotion arises. We do have this mechanical body, so we have a mechanical brain that does its cognitive processing, and it's tied to a nervous system that generates thought-created emotions. And simply at the end of the day, our emotions are simply a reflection of the quality of the thought that we're having in that moment. Now, thought pops in, emotion arises. On their own, if you don't do anything, if you don't pay attention to it, if you don't tell yourself a big story about the meaning of that thought and the meaning of that feeling and building layer upon layer, if you don't do that, they just evaporate like bubbles. They just evaporate. And so that is actually just the ebb and flow. We have thousands and thousands and thousands of thoughts and emotions arising as the day goes by. Thankfully, we don't have an awareness of absolutely every single one of them, or we'd be going a little bit crazy. And the thing with the good mood and the bad mood is, again, it's just a cycle. And the beautiful thing to know is, if you're in a bad mood, feeling a bit low in energy, a bit low, then the thinking that arises is going to be colored by that. And so the same event outside there, if colored by low mood thinking, well, then the story you have, the experience you have of that thing is going to be negative. It's going to be insecure. It's going to be problematic. But that's not because that thing out there is by its own intrinsic nature problematic. It's because you're in a mood and you're having thinking that reflects that mood, and then putting that on that thing out there. Even, and that's then the same with a good mood. So you might be having a very high mood, and then that event that's happening, that person that you're dealing with, you will then find that that same situation will suddenly not look so problematic. And I don't know about you, but hands up who has responded to an email in a low mood, and we've been pissed off and we've been frustrated, and we start to, or the text message, yeah, one of the two, and you're sending it, you're writing this inflammatory piece. It's every good bit of swear language in there, and you're just about to press go on it. And thankfully in that moment, maybe you didn't, I don't know, you might have been distracted by a phone call or something like that, and you didn't send it. Thank God, because you then check it even later that day, but certainly checked it maybe the following day, and then found yourself rereading it with a fresh set of eyes and a fresh mood, and just cringing at what you could have sent, and then delete it happily and catch yourself and go, oh wow, same person, same event, same email, different mood, different lens, different experience. This is how we get through the world. It is not the outside world making us feel anything at all. So as far as our loving partners and families and jobs and things, they're not making us frustrated, they're not driving us crazy, and they are not pissing us off. Our thinking about them are doing that. This is not to say that there isn't an outside world, and this is not to say that there are people doing stuff, and some of that stuff that they might be doing might even be abusive. I've gone through 2 of them. But what's beautiful when you have this insight, this awareness, the moment I'm talking to you, you might be intellectually understanding it, but the transformation is an insight. It's an embodied realization, and you will have those aha moments yourself. And one of those aha moments about this, the truth of the fact that the other person isn't causing your anything, is what I had in my realization with my the second ex-husband. I'm home back in Australia. Thankfully, after a year of being back, I secured work. I was very lucky to be living with my mum for the first year and a bit. And then after that, I was able to secure work, and then I started renting my lovely apartment. And I'm sitting on my lounge in my lovely apartment. So it's already like a year and a half since I'd left the marriage and left Pakistan. And I'm there, and I'm on my lovely lounge. He's never been to Australia, let alone sat on that lounge. He's never been in my apartment, but he might as well have. He might as well have been physically there, because I was distressing myself in my thinking and in replaying the stories and trying to figure it all out. He was as real to me, and I actually caught myself seeing that it was almost like a holograph of him, a hologram. I'd put him on my lounge, on the other corner of the lounge, as I'm talking to him in my head, but it was almost like he was physically there. And the penny dropped. He's never been there. He was never in my apartment. There was absolutely nothing that he was doing in that present moment to make me feel that distressed. It was all my thinking. And then when I had that realization, I was in time able to look at, well, what about when I was actively in abuse, when he was actively assaulting me, when he was actively looming over me, all 6'3" of him, screaming in my face. What about then? Surely then it is him causing me to feel something. And at first I really did resist acknowledging the truth that even in that situation, it still wasn't him directly. It was my fears. It was my story. It was whatever his behavior was representing to me at that time was what was causing me to have my experience. However, of course, in where the physical abuse is happening, I could have been physically killed. I could have been physically injured, absolutely. And so I'm not at all saying that, oh, well, that was all an illusion. I'm a physical body here. This physical body can be killed. So it's not at all in any way to say that you stay in those situations of physical harm at all. But it enabled me to separate myself from him and those events by looking at the truth of my story, the story that I was having for myself at that time. And then later on, when I kept replaying the stories in my head and manifesting him on my lounge, almost as a solid form. And so this is it. This is the outside. The outside world is not directly impacting us. It is our thinking about the outside world that is giving us our experience. And so the first thing to understand then with fear and anxiety, fear, anxiety, and worry is it is all in your head. It is all the story you are telling yourself. Underneath this stream of thinking that comes in and the nervous system emotion that arises, that actually isn't who you are. You have a true self. Your true self is in fact energy. You are an energy being in a physical body, and that energy is universal energy. It is the energy that connects us to the universe. It is radiant, it is abundant, it is limitless. It is forgiveness, it's unconditional love. This is in fact our default factory setting that we came into existence with. But because we have a physical form, we do have this other dynamic of thought and emotion. But the thought and emotion isn't our true self. We are not the stories we tell ourselves. We are not the sum of the events that happen to us. We are just not that. And so we can tap into our innate wisdom, which is our inner GPS, when we don't chase after the story in our head and make importance of the emotions that are arising. We don't have to control our thoughts. We don't have to control our emotions. We don't have to analyze them. We don't have to reframe them. None of those things help us to actually connect to our true nature, which is universal mind. Now, some of the illusions that happen with our thinking, one is this separate realities, where our anxiety and fear and worry comes from. One is a misunderstanding or not understanding that just as my experience is thought created, so is the other person's. And we are all unique. No one sees the world in exactly the same way as another person. We may all be in a movie cinema at the same time, watching the same movie, eating from the same popcorn. But at the end of the movie, we will have had a different experience. We can try and use this very limited language that tries to explain in a kind of intellectual, abstract, theoretical way what's going on for us. We can try. And a person might be able to understand at an intellectual level, but they are never going to be able to experience what we experience, and vice versa. And what does this mean? Well, this means one of the biggest things that we cause distress for ourselves is when so-and-so does something, we then assume their intention. We tell ourselves quite automatically that they did that because, and generally that because from an ego's perspective is generally fear-based and not positive, because that's the nature of ego thinking. And we'll say they did it because, long list of crappy stuff. And it's wrong. And then we respond to that. And then what happens is we're not responding to them. We're not responding to the situation directly. We think we are, but we're not. We're responding to the story in our head about them and the situation. And this is where all this misunderstanding and anxiety and angst and all the rest of it come from. Fear is not understanding that we all have our own reality. Now, we can ask the other person, well, what did you mean? What were you thinking? This is at least a step closer to fixing any issues of miscommunication or misunderstanding. But even still, we don't, it's words. And words are illusion. It's the illusory thinking. It's not, in fact, the truth. Our truth is that we are all spirit beings. We are all connected. We are all the same energy. And when we approach the rest of the world out there from that space of inner wisdom, and you see the spirit in the other person, then you get to see that the words that they're saying and the story in relation to the story in their head, it's just illusion. It's just smoke and mirrors. It's not real. And you can then, in fact, go, well, if they're saying, you know, negative stuff, it's because they are having some insecure thinking and some insecure feeling in that present moment. It will go away. The best way to show up for the difficult people in your life is to show up from a space of open-hearted goodwill and allowing, with compassion and forgiveness, allowing them to be in that moment. We all get stuck occasionally. It's okay. It's all part and parcel of being a physical human being, is we will get a bit trapped in our thinking. But when you have this understanding and as insight, then you realize that it's just thinking in the moment. And therein lies the joy, because you realize it's just thinking in the moment and it will pass, and it's not the truth. Similarly, the future is unknown. We spend a hell of a lot of time worrying, stories in our head about what's going to happen. Well, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen, and our limited thinking is not going to help us in the present moment to solve anything. But the beautiful thing is, our answers to life, the universe, and everything is actually deep within us in our heartful wisdom. It is our default setting to be tapped into the limitless knowledge of the universe in the present moment. So you don't use your brain and your thinking and your intellect to connect to this pool of infinite wisdom. But the beautiful thing is, it's there. We all have it. And so what has this realization, this insight for me, how that's showing up is, I don't prepare reams of notes anymore. You've got the slideshow in front of you. You can see my slides. I whacked that together in about 2 hours. But old me, before I had this trust in my own ability to speak with wisdom and actually in the present moment, the old me would have 16 pages of notes. And I'd be looking at my notes and looking up and looking at my notes and looking up. I'm not looking at anything. I am speaking from my inner wisdom in this moment, knowing that whatever I'm saying right now, someone out there needs to hear it and it will resonate. And I don't have to worry. I don't have to plan anything, because everything will be taken care of from one moment to the next moment to the next. And that's so freeing, so liberating. And that is also, obviously a stepping stone to joy. And so we've been talking about our inner GPS. I realize my slides have, I've kind of jumped over a little bit, as does happen when you are extemporizing. So we're talking about that inner GPS. That's the heartful wisdom. So we don't logic our way through life, and we don't feel our way through life, as in those emotions, happy, sad, angry, frustrated. Those emotions tell us nothing about the outside world, and they also don't tell us anything about ourselves. They only tell us about the quality of our thinking in that present moment. Our inner GPS is our innate default factory setting. And so the beautiful thing to realize, unlike maybe, Freud saying we're a hot mess, or Christianity saying we're born of original sin, the beautiful thing to acknowledge is that we are, in fact, so perfect. Our spirit is perfect. We may get a bit stuck in crappy thinking, but our core is perfect. Oh, thank you. I'm checking here quickly. I just caught this. Thank you, my beautiful Tanya. And yes, I know, mini summit number 24. It's so crazy we're already here. So that is who we are. Our default setting is one of limitless abundance and radiance and joy and forgiveness. It's a beautiful space to be in. And we don't have to do anything to create it. So what has been a wonderful realization of this is that, so for the first 20 years of my adulthood, as I was into meditation and yoga and Buddhism, I got my degrees in psychology. I spent a great deal of time looking for tools and strategies and chasing to chase this sense of inner peace, to create this sense of inner peace, because indeed I was laboring under the misunderstanding of my core being. My core being is perfect and it's already there and it doesn't need to be created. Don't get me wrong, yoga is wonderful, tantra is wonderful, journaling is wonderful, vision boards are wonderful. All these things are wonderful, absolutely love doing them. I do so many different things because they're just fun to do. But they are not the thing. These things do not create our wisdom. They do not create our inner spirit. We came into existence with our inner spirit, so we don't actually have to do anything to tap into it. There's no doing. There's actually no doing. You can snap into an awareness of your conscious awareness of your innate radiant being without a whole bunch of tools and tricks. And in fact, what happened in the early years, I was so focused on the tools and tricks, kind of from a very abstract, theoretical and intellectual way, that they themselves were not, well, they got in the road. They took me further away from my innate well-being because I was focused on the doing of these things and chasing after an expected way of experiencing. And you don't have to do that. That being said, doing them for the fun of it, absolutely cool. Changing your identity, like basically what it is like is our stories that we tell of ourselves and others in the world. That is part and parcel of our physical existence. We have an intellect for a reason. We have a physical body for a reason. Telling stories of ourselves and changing our identities and speaking in this way is absolutely fine. It's part and parcel of existence. When you know that story A is no more real about you or someone else than story B, life becomes like stage, like theater, like dress-ups, and you're just trying on different costumes and you're having fun in them. I'm going to try and be this 1 minute and that 1 minute. And that is in fact the truth of our experience. That's the truth of our existence in this physical world, that the stories we tell, well, they're no more real than the next. And the stories we tell of ourselves of goodness, of forgiveness, of unconditional positive regard, those are in fact far more real. The fears that we tell ourselves about and this lack of self-worth and the stuff we're telling about other people, it's all illusion. It's not real. It's not pointing to anything except to the ego thinking, which is illusion and is fear-based because it separates. It has a lens that separates our being from our true nature, our true default factory setting. Imagine it like, we're a mobile phone or a device of some sort. We have the factory setting, which is the basic operating system. Well, our basic operating system is in fact our spirit. our true energy spirit, and it is loving kindness, it's compassion, it's radiance, it's expansive, it's all the good stuff. And that's our factory setting. But over our physical existence, as we go through life, we just keep filling up the device with all these different apps. And the apps being the thoughts, the stories, the emotions that we have attached to the thoughts and all that. And they're just extra stuff, and most of it's pretty useless. So you can delete them from your device. Absolutely, no problem. You can delete them. You can just let them go. That is my telling me I've got 40 minutes. I've done 45 minutes. All right. So where do we get to our inner wisdom, our inner state of being? We get to it in the present moment. And the beautiful thing is the present moment is also our default. The present moment is the default factory setting of not being caught in your thinking. So if we're not bringing the past into the present through our thinking, or not worrying about the future in the present moment through our thinking, the absence of either is suddenly the present moment. And if you can see by what I'm saying, you don't have to do anything to get into the present moment. And in fact, the more you do, the further you go from being in the present moment. What it's actually about is releasing. It's letting go of past thinking, letting go of future worrying, and just the act of letting go is being in the present moment. And in that present moment, you will hear that little voice inside you, the one that most of us have ignored for quite some time. Hands up, I've done it. You know, this, and it's that voice that I ignored that got me into my 2 crappy marriages. Totally own that. They were doing their own thing. They were being crappy in their own way and doing their own stuff based on their own insecure thinking and the insecure feeling arising from that. And then they walked out into the world and responded based on the illusion that the outside world is causing them to feel whatever they're feeling. So then they took action to control in some way what they perceived was the thing causing them to feel insecure. We are all doing this. We all do this to some degree or another. We are all doing this. And this is the illusion, and this is where the pain and suffering comes from. And when you have the awareness that it is illusion and it's not where your experience comes from, you are actually able to take a step back and a deep breath and take a moment and let all the crummy thinking and feeling and emotions just evaporate, because that's what they do. We don't have to be scared of our experience, because it dissolves by itself when you don't pay attention to it and you don't add importance and story to it. It all just evaporates. And what we are left with when the thought and the emotion evaporates, what we are left with is our pristine, energetic, universal mind, the bit that connects us to, if you want to say God from that framework, God. If you want to say universal mind, formless, beginningless, energetic, beautiful radiance and all the rest of it, that's in fact what we are. And that's what you're left with. Absolutely what you're left with. That in itself is joy. So very quickly, because I know I'm getting on. I went away. I can do it. Yay, brilliant. Okay, so 6 elements of joy. So this is the bare bones of who we are and what we're all on about, and the framework that I work from is the core. Now, from that, this year, I had my own epiphany of the mechanics of joy and where it's coming from. And I had just arising from my universal creative pool of wisdom, this came flooding out to me between 11 in the evening and 4 in the morning. Yeah, insomnia. And it just all came flooding out. And out of that space, it was not an intellectual exercise at all. And bit by bit, I have been fleshing it out. So first, so awaken is the model. Awaken being both reflective of what goes on, what in fact is happening in order to tap into the joy. We are awakening to our innate wisdom. And it's also, and let's see if I get this right, acronym, I think, yeah. So awareness is the first day, awareness, and that is the foundation. The foundation of our joyful living comes from this awareness of our true nature and the awareness of the illusion of what we call our experience. So having that awareness, first of all, of that is the first step, but also having the present moment awareness of our inner wisdom, being able to tap into it, being able to tune in and listen to it. Our wisdom is what arises from that innate spirit, that innate universal mind within us. That is where our wisdom comes from. That is that gut knowing, that is that universal expansive knowing of which way to go. It does not come from our thinking. It has got nothing to do with logic. It's got nothing to do with the intellect. And its nature, when we are tapping in and vibing from that and moving forward with an open heart from that space, that is innately joy. Appreciation is so important. Appreciating the good is key, because of course, if we don't appreciate the good things within ourselves and within the world, the joys, the things to be grateful for, we indeed then don't have joy. We don't have a life of abundance. We don't have a life of beauty if we don't focus our attention with appreciation. Also, appreciation, it encompasses gratitude. It also encompasses goodwill. And one of the things that is so beautiful about the framework of the Inside Out paradigm is it is absolutely possible to have goodwill for someone who you don't agree with. It's absolutely possible. Compatibility is not required. Communication, in fact, is not the key ingredient between two people to have a good, healthy relationship. Goodwill is closeness coming from goodwill. And when we internalize the truth that we all have our own realities, and if someone's having a moment, it's their moment and it's got nothing to do with us, we can then show up with compassion. We can show up with kindness. We can be quick to forgive. And hence coming into kindness. And this is where that kindness comes from, the goodwill and the kindness. When we know that the other person is in whatever state they're in, when we're in the state we're in, that's probably the first and most important stepping stone of kindness, and where it needs to be displayed to ourselves, being kind to ourselves. Equanimity. Equanimity is being at peace even when things are going wrong. Because the truth of the matter is, this physical world, shit's going to happen. It's always going to happen. Nothing is permanent. Everything changes. There are ups and downs. Sometimes we're going to feel like, sometimes we're going to be okay. We're going to feel okay. Sometimes we're not. Equanimity is the ability to be okay with not being okay, and not having this urge to keep chasing after and changing your experience, and just letting it be. And then the final element is now, being in the present, because in the present moment is where we tap into our innate wisdom, our spirit wisdom, and where we can be guided through our life to respond in that moment in the best possible way. And it doesn't require us being all caught up in our head and trying to logic our way through things. So the process that this works through is a 3-step process. And I'll be really quick now. It's just what first happens, because we have this language thing. Your first step in the process of the 6 elements of joyful living, or awakening to them, awakening to your inner essence, is understanding. It will be intellectual. So today you're having a lesson. You will be hearing this intellectually at first. It's going to hit you at this level. But the transformation does not happen at this level. Hence why therapy is pointless. Other modalities that have you stuck up here in your head, analyzing what you're thinking, analyzing why you thought it, being stuck up here in the stories in your head, absolutely pointless. The answers are not found there. The answers are not found in the past. The past is dead. No point worrying about the future, because the truth is that in the present moment, from your heartful wisdom, you will have the answer you need to respond in that moment. So anything that has you still up here in your head, complete waste of time, and the answers aren't there. Now, but it is the first level we get to, because we have nothing more than this except words and intellect to start with. But when you hear something, because this is universal truth, you are hearing it. You might hear it at first here, but your inner being, your core being, is hearing it as well. And that's where the insights start happening. You will start having moments where you walk through your world and you start seeing the truth unfolding of how you're experiencing things. And you have insight. You know, the more and more aha moments. I love them, and they're fabulous. Sometimes they're big epiphanies, other times they're very subtle. For me, most of the time they have been quite subtle, and it's just, I didn't have to chase them. I listened to a lecture, I read something, and then found myself suddenly looking at myself and my life very differently. And once the insight hits, there's no stuffing it back in the box. You might get stuck in thinking momentarily, because that is the nature of our existence to do that. But you'll always come back to the insight of your true energy being and the truth of it all. And that's what's so beautiful. And that's then where the transformation happens. And this is an ongoing, lifelong, ever-deepening experience. Understanding, insight, transformation. And it happens all, like, it just permeates throughout your life, like water going through one of those shaky sand toys. And it's just the water's going through all of that, and it just gets through everything. And that's what is miraculous about how these transformation happens in your life, and you didn't have to do anything. This is what I love about it. I didn't have to have therapy and analysis and change anything. I did not need to change the outside world in order for my experience to be transformed. And then what is beautiful is when we show up energetically, wholehearted and open-hearted, it does invite those around us to experience a greater security within themselves, and they start showing up differently. This happened in my relationship with my dad. I think a lot of people might well know I've talked quite a lot about my difficult relationship with my dad and what has been happening without me having to go into family therapy with him, without even telling him. Like, there's been no discussion about, like, relationship discussion and problem discussion about the relationship. Didn't have to do any of that. I just began to understand my own experience, and I had compassion for his experience and was able to see that it had nothing to do with me, so I could let go of all those stories that were not serving me. And that enabled me to show up in the present moment to him and check myself if I started getting into my head about things, and just show up with goodwill. Choose goodwill. And then what's been really beautiful is he's showing up with goodwill. He still has his moments. I still have my moments, but I don't know. You don't take it personally anymore. It's not a big drama. And to the point that, yeah, he actually was, he rang me the other day, love him bits. He rang me the other day, offered that he'd help me buy an apartment. And I didn't ask for that. I didn't think about it. He offered it. I just went, okay, if you want to. Then a week later, he texts me to say that he won't do it. Now, old me would have really gone into a complete tailspin over that. And I would have told myself a story about him not loving me and he this, that, and the other, and my own word and fear and crap, and the whole kit and caboodle would have been an absolute nightmare. But honestly, when this time, because of the inner peace that I have, it was a story, it was an offer. I went, yeah. The offer was taken away. I went, yeah. My goodwill for him did not waver. That is, and I didn't have to think my way into that. I didn't have to, it just, that is where I'm at with it now. And so that's what I mean. You have joyful living even when the things are still shitty. It's not like this idea of pursuing happiness and I'll be happy when. No. So as I said, it's a perpetually deepening cyclic insight process leading to heartful wisdom. Very quickly, 91% of people reported being significantly more in control of their behaviors and thoughts and feelings when they internalized the understanding and had insights from the inside out paradigm perspective. 82% reported experiencing higher self-esteem, positive changes in marriage and personal relationships. As you can see, I can attest to that. This was a study that was done by the Inside Out Paradigm community, 3 Principles community. Suddenly can't remember who did it, but it was a study of like 3,000 people. So that's what the statistics are reflecting of the 3,000 people studied. That was what their responses. But there are actually plenty of studies out there on the impact of the 3 principles. So coming very quickly to an end, because I know that the timer went off at the 45-minute mark. If this resonated with you, if this journey, insight-driven transformational journey inwards to your inner wisdom and therefore joy, regardless of what crap's going on in your life, if this has resonated with you, if I've resonated with you, even if I might not have always been looking at the damn camera. I don't know. I know I'm going to watch this thing back and my eyes are going to have been darting everywhere. I apologize. My camera presence is not always perfect. But if I've resonated with you, if what I have said has resonated with you and you would like to go further in this and work with me, I am open arms asking you to join me. I have created from that Awaken model of joyful living a 7-week program, the Awaken program. It's a group coaching program. It is going to also include, so the first 6 weeks are walking you through and unpacking in group coaching with live Q&A following, so it'll all be live, the 6 elements of joy and how they actually unfold, and how you're personally going through them. And at the 7th week, everyone's going to have an individual, private, joyful life optimization session. Before we get into the coaching program, you're all going to be armed with a joyful life, map and design your joyful year bucket list. And it's going to be a workbook that helps you track what your joy, your areas of life, family, health, wealth, all that stuff, all the good categories, and a bucket list, how to design your bucket list. And so what this 7-week program is aimed at doing is helping you to design and unpack and get ready to implement the joyful year ahead. And so the final 60-minute session with me will be to optimize the design that you've created for yourself. And I can tell you there'll be surprises along the way, and probably what you start with and what you end with will look vastly different. You'll also get bonus daily WhatsApp support for the duration of the program with me. You will have access to my bonus 3-day Love Fearlessly Masterclass, which I love it. I do. It's brilliant. You will have lifetime access to the exclusive online community. You'll be in a dedicated community. Total value of this program all up is $6,049. It will initially be its regular price, what I aim to put it out there in the world for as my ongoing signature program will be $4,967. It all adds up to 8. I love 8, very good number. Hence you see 8. So, well, the 4967 does. I haven't added up the 6049. I should have done that to figure that one out. But yeah, anyway. So your irresistible offer, it's 888. I know those eights. It just looks so gorgeous. 8. Brilliant. Now, if you pay in full, you will also get an extra bonus. You'll get the Battle-Free Communication Masterclass, or you can pay in 6 weekly installments. This is what you get, and it's just going to be so much fun. And the reason it's at this irresistible offer is because it's the first run through. You guys are going to be my guinea pigs. This is the case study. And so I'm really looking forward to taking you all through the journey. And it's going to, and actually I feel that case study, but it's live. And so ultimately in the end, one day this program will be in fancy schmancy recorded mode, and the modules will be in recorded mode, and that will be self-paced, and there'll be live Q&A sessions throughout the program. When my business is an empire, they may be done by other coaches that I have hired and got on retainer, or however you do it. See, thinking big here. But in the meantime, it's me, and you'll be with me, and you'll be live with me through Zoom and live in the group as well. So it'll stream live through Zoom and into the group for those who can't attend live. They can watch it in replay. So that is it. You will get to work with moi, and we will unpack together the most joyful year ever. And I'm having so much fun at the moment putting together the joy tracker and the joyful year design workbook. It's so much fun doing this. I hadn't done one before, so it's just putting it together was a load of fun. And so I'm looking forward to this. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. I'm getting off now because I actually think I might have gone longer than I really should have. Yes. Okay, I'm leaving. See you all later.